My name is Emma Richardson, and I'm 31 years old. For my entire life, I was the invisible daughter, the one who helped with everything but got credit for nothing. While my younger brother Tyler lived like a king and my parents invested in his every dream, I was expected to be grateful for whatever scraps I got. But last spring, when I accidentally discovered that my mother had secretly written me out of the family will, leaving everything to Tyler and his future children, something inside me snapped. What happened next didn't just expose their betrayal, it led to the most strategic legal battle of their lives, one that left them begging for mercy. Before I tell you how I went from being erased to becoming the rightful heir to everything, please take a moment to like and subscribe if you believe family loyalty should go both ways. I'd love to know, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Drop a comment below about a time when you had to stand up for yourself. Now, let me take you back to that April afternoon when I discovered just how little I meant to the people who were supposed to love me most. I was organizing my mother Patricia's home office, something I did every few months because she claimed she was too overwhelmed by paperwork. It was a sunny Saturday in suburban Denver, and as usual, I was the one handling the family responsibilities while Tyler was off with friends, completely unbothered by any obligations. This had been my role for as long as I could remember. While Tyler played baseball and went to expensive summer camps, I stayed home and helped with household tasks. While he got a full ride to college because Dad pulled strings with his alumni connections, I worked 2 jobs to pay for community college. While Tyler traveled Europe after graduation on the family dime, I moved back home to help Mom with her anxiety and ended up staying for 3 years. Don't get me wrong, I'd eventually built a decent life for myself. I worked as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm, had my own apartment, and was slowly building savings. But compared to Tyler's startup ventures funded by Dad's friends and his luxury lifestyle, I always felt like the consolation prize daughter. The family dynamic was crystal clear at every gathering. Dad would be talking about Tyler's entrepreneurial spirit and his latest business idea. Mom would show pictures of Tyler's girlfriend Madison, an influencer with 50,000 followers, talking about what beautiful grandchildren they'd give her. And me? I was the reliable one, the helper, the one who coordinated family events and made sure everyone's needs were met. Emma doesn't need help, Dad would say when relatives asked about my life. She's practical, she'll be fine. It was code for, we've invested everything in Tyler because he's our real success story. As I sorted through Mom's desk that day, I was looking for her tax documents to help prepare for her appointment with the accountant. That's when I found the manila folder labeled Estate Planning Draft. Inside was a letter from Morrison and Associates, the family's law firm. The date was just 3 weeks old. My hands actually trembled as I read the cover letter. Dear Mrs. Richardson, as per our discussion, I've prepared the revised will according to your specifications. Please review the attached documents and let me know if you'd like any changes before we finalize. As discussed, this version removes Emma from the primary inheritance and designates Tyler as sole beneficiary, with provisions for his future children. I had to read it 3 times before the words actually sank in. Then I opened the attached draft will. Tyler would inherit the house worth $800,000. Tyler would inherit Dad's business valued at over $2 million. Tyler would inherit the investment portfolio, nearly $1.5 million. Tyler would inherit Mom's jewelry collection, the vacation property in Aspen, even the family photographs and heirlooms. And me, I got a single line. To my daughter Emma, I leave the sum of $10,000 and my grateful appreciation for her years of help to the family. $10,000. After 31 years of being the good daughter, the helpful one, the one who sacrificed her 20s to be available whenever they needed something. $10,000, like a tip for services rendered. My phone rang. It was Mom calling from downstairs. Emma, honey, are you finding everything okay up there? I looked at the will in my hands, then at the framed photo on her desk. Our family at Tyler's college graduation, where I'd been cropped out so they could frame it better. Just organizing, Mom, everything's fine. But nothing was fine, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to just accept it. That evening, I sat in my apartment reading through the will draft for the 10th time. The language was careful, deliberate. This wasn't an oversight or a mistake. Mom had specifically met with the lawyer to remove me from the inheritance. I'd always assumed I'd share equally with Tyler. The reasoning became clear as I read through the attached notes in Mom's handwriting. Emma has always been more practical and independent. She doesn't need money the way Tyler does. His business ventures require capital, and he'll need to support a family someday. Emma is career-focused and will be fine on her own. Career-focused, as if my paralegal job was some high-powered career choice rather than the result of working my way up without family support. As if being independent was my choice rather than a necessity when you're not the favored child. But the note that really cut was the last line. Tyler represents the family legacy. Emma has always been more of a helper than a leader. A helper, after 3 decades, that's how she saw me. Not as a daughter deserving equal treatment, but as hired help who happened to share their DNA. I pulled out my laptop and did what any paralegal would do. I researched. Colorado inheritance law, will contests, grounds for challenging estate planning decisions. What I found both frustrated and empowered me. In Colorado, parents have broad discretion over their wills. There's no requirement to leave equal inheritances to children. But there were grounds for contests: undue influence, lack of capacity, fraud, failure to follow proper procedures. The key was proving that something improper had occurred in the will's creation. More importantly, I learned about something called omitted child statutes and the concept of intestate succession. What happens when someone dies without a valid will? If I could prove this will was invalid for any reason, Colorado law would default to equal division between Tyler and me. But challenging a will typically required waiting until after someone died, and my parents were both healthy and in their 60s. I needed a different strategy. That's when I remembered something from my work at the law firm. Estate planning wasn't just about wills. It involved ongoing legal and financial decisions where family members had rights and standing to be informed. If they were making major changes to the estate plan, there might be procedural requirements they'd overlooked. I spent the weekend researching everything I could find about our family's finances and legal structure. Dad's business was technically a family corporation with multiple shareholders. The house was in both parents' names. The investment accounts had complex trust structures I'd never understood, but had helped Mom organize paperwork for over the years. What I discovered changed everything. This wasn't just about a will, it was about a systematic restructuring of family assets to benefit Tyler exclusively. And some of those changes might require disclosure to all family members or even unanimous consent. More importantly, I found something Mom clearly didn't know. The family business incorporation documents from 20 years ago listed both Tyler and me as successor shareholders in the event of Dad's death or incapacity. Those documents had never been updated, which meant no matter what Mom's new will said, I had legally protected interests in the business that couldn't be simply willed away. By Sunday night, I had a plan, but it would require something I'd never done before, putting my own interests ahead of family harmony. Monday morning, I arrived at work early and made a decision that would change everything. I scheduled a consultation with Janet Morrison from Morrison and Associates, the same firm handling my parents' estate planning, but with a different attorney than the one working on Mom's will. I need advice about a potential inheritance issue, I told her over the phone. Of course, just so you know, we do represent the Richardson family for estate planning, but I don't personally handle that account. Would you like me to check for any conflicts? Actually, that's exactly why I'm calling you instead of someone else. I need to understand my rights regarding changes being made to my family's estate plan. Janet was in her 50s, sharp and direct. When I explained the situation in her office that Wednesday, she reviewed the business incorporation documents I'd brought copies of. "Emma, this is more complex than a simple will contest," she said after an hour of review. "Your parents can absolutely choose to leave personal assets to whoever they want, but this business structure creates fiduciary duties and ownership rights that can't be changed unilaterally." She pointed to a clause in the original incorporation. "See this, when your father incorporated the family business, he designated both children as successor shareholders with vesting rights beginning at age 25. You've been a legal partial owner of this business for 6 years, even if no one told you." My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means your mother can't will away your business interests to Tyler because they're not hers to give. They're already partially yours. But more importantly, it means any attempt to transfer your father's business interests without your knowledge or consent could constitute a breach of fiduciary duty. Janet pulled up another document. I'm also seeing trust structures here that designate both children as beneficiaries. If your parents are trying to remove you from the trust without proper notification procedures, that's grounds for immediate legal action, not just after they die. She leaned back in her chair. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Have your parents given you any formal notification about changes to your ownership interests or trust beneficiary status? Nothing. I found the will draft by accident. Then they may be in violation of Colorado trust and corporate law right now. These changes can't be made in secret if they affect your existing legal interests. Janet handed me a thick packet of documents. Take these home and review them carefully. If you decide to challenge this, we're not talking about waiting for them to die and then contesting a will. We're talking about immediate legal action to protect interests you already own. That night, I spread the documents across my dining room table. The picture they painted was staggering. Over the past 2 years, my parents had been systematically restructuring everything to benefit Tyler exclusively. Trust amendments, business share transfers, even changes to life insurance beneficiaries. But they'd made a crucial mistake. In their rush to cut me out, they'd forgotten about the original legal structures that gave me protected rights. Rights I could enforce immediately. The question was whether I had the courage to do it. I called in sick the next day and drove to the county courthouse. In the public records, I found documents showing the recent attempts to change the business structure, transfer of shares from Dad to Tyler, amendments to the family trust, even refinancing of the mortgage to add Tyler as a cosigner. But I also found something else. The original documents were still legally valid. None of the changes had been properly executed because they required my signature or formal consent as an existing shareholder. My parents had been making changes as if I didn't exist, but legally, I still owned exactly what I'd owned before. That afternoon, I made a decision that would shatter our family dynamic forever. I walked into Morrison and Associates and retained Janet Morrison as my attorney. I want to protect my existing legal interests and challenge any unauthorized changes to the family business and trust structures, I told her. Are you sure, Emma? This will likely destroy your relationship with your family. I thought about 31 years of being invisible, of being the helper, of watching Tyler get every advantage while I was expected to be grateful for scraps. Janet, they already destroyed our relationship when they decided I don't matter. I just didn't know it yet. She pulled out a legal pad. Then let's talk about your options. Over the next 2 weeks, Janet and I built what she called the most thorough family inheritance case she'd handled in 20 years. But this wasn't about inheritance at all. It was about current legal ownership that was being hidden from me. The beauty of your situation, Janet explained, is that you don't need to prove wrongdoing or contest their intentions. You just need to enforce rights you already have under existing legal documents. We requested formal documentation of all changes made to the family business and trust structures. Under Colorado law, as an existing shareholder and trust beneficiary, I had the right to be informed of any material changes affecting my interests. The response from their lawyer, David Morrison, Janet's partner, which created an interesting dynamic, was immediate and panicked. A formal letter requesting a meeting to discuss the Richardson family's estate planning matters. They know they screwed up, Janet said, reviewing the letter. David's too good a lawyer not to see the problems they've created. But I wasn't interested in a quiet family meeting where they'd try to manage the situation. Instead, Janet filed formal legal notices with the county clerk, establishing my existing ownership interests and putting a legal cloud on any unauthorized transfers. Within 48 hours of the filing, my phone started ringing. Mom called first. Emma, what is this about lawyers and legal notices? David Morrison called saying there are complications with our estate planning. I let it go to voicemail. Dad called next. Emma, we need to talk immediately. There's been some kind of misunderstanding with the business documents. Another voicemail. Tyler called last and his message was different. Emma, what the hell are you doing? Mom's having a panic attack and dad's talking about disowning you. Call me back. Instead of returning their calls, I did something I'd never done before. I sent them each a formal letter through Janet's office. Dear family, I recently discovered that significant changes have been made to our family's business and trust structures without my knowledge or consent. As I am a legal shareholder in the family business and beneficiary of family trusts, these changes may violate my existing rights under Colorado law. I have retained legal counsel to protect my interests. Any further communications regarding these matters should be directed to my attorney, Janet Morrison at Morrison and Associates. The nuclear bomb I just dropped on our family was nothing compared to what came next. Janet had done something brilliant. She'd researched not just the legal documents, but the financial implications of the changes my parents were trying to make. What we found was that by attempting to transfer business assets to Tyler exclusively, they'd created significant tax liabilities that would actually reduce the overall value of the estate. Emma, your parents are about to make a very expensive mistake, Janet explained. The way they're structuring these transfers, Tyler will owe substantial capital gains taxes immediately. Plus, they're losing valuable tax benefits that come from maintaining the original family business structure. More importantly, she discovered that some of the business assets had appreciated significantly in value. My shares in the family business, which had been worth about $200,000 when I turned 25, were now worth over $600,000 due to increased property values and business growth. They're not just trying to cut you out of future inheritance, Janet said. They're trying to take away something you currently own that's worth more than they probably realize. That's when we made our boldest move. Instead of just challenging the unauthorized changes, we demanded a formal audit of the business and an immediate accounting of all assets in which I held ownership interests. The letter Janet sent to their lawyer was devastating. Our client demands immediate access to all corporate books and records, as is her right as a shareholder. We also request a formal accounting of all trust assets and distributions made over the past 5 years. Any attempt to deny these rights will result in immediate legal action for breach of fiduciary duty. The response came within 24 hours. David Morrison requested an emergency meeting with all parties. They want to settle, Janet told me. Your parents just realized they can't make these changes without your consent, and they definitely can't hide your existing ownership from you. But I wasn't interested in a quiet settlement that let them maintain their narrative. I wanted something else: acknowledgement, transparency, and equal treatment going forward. What if they refuse? I asked. Janet smiled. Then we file a lawsuit that becomes public record, requesting a court-appointed administrator for the family business and full disclosure of all asset transfers attempted without proper shareholder consent. Trust me, Emma, they don't want this to go public. The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday at Morrison and Associates. For the first time in my life, I would be sitting across from my family as an equal, with my own legal representation and documented rights they couldn't dismiss or ignore. I spent that week mentally preparing for what would either be the beginning of a new family dynamic or the end of our relationships entirely. But for the first time since I'd found that we'll draft, I felt something I'd never experienced before: power. Friday morning, I walked into the Morrison and Associates conference room wearing my best business suit. I'd taken the day off work, done my hair professionally, and carried a leather portfolio that contained copies of every document supporting my case. My parents were already there with their lawyer David Morrison, looking like they were attending a funeral. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. Tyler arrived 10 minutes late, clearly annoyed at having to be there at all. This is ridiculous, Tyler said, taking his seat. We're family. We shouldn't need lawyers to have a conversation. Janet opened her portfolio. Actually, Tyler, when family members attempt to transfer corporate assets without proper shareholder consent, lawyers become necessary to protect legal rights. David Morrison, a man in his 70s with the demeanor of someone who'd seen every family drama imaginable, cleared his throat. Let's start with the facts. Emma, through her counsel, has raised concerns about changes made to the Richardson family business structure and trust agreements. Concerns, I spoke for the first time. I found out by accident that you've been secretly restructuring everything to cut me out completely. That's not a concern, that's a betrayal. Mom started crying again. Emma, we were trying to be practical. Tyler needs the business support for his entrepreneurial ventures. You have a stable job. Patricia, Janet interrupted. Emma has legal ownership interests in the business that can't be simply reassigned because you think Tyler needs them more. Dad finally spoke. We thought Emma would understand. She's always been more independent. Independent because you never offered me any other option, I said. Tyler got college funding, business connections, startup capital, and family support for every venture. I got independence because that's all I was ever given. David Morrison spread out the original business incorporation documents. Let's focus on the legal issues. Emma, as a designated successor shareholder, has ownership rights that vested when she turned 25. These rights cannot be transferred without her explicit consent. Tyler looked confused. What ownership rights? The business is Dad's. Actually, Janet said, pulling out the corporate structure charts. According to the original incorporation, both you and Emma became partial owners 6 years ago. Emma owns approximately 30% of the business based on the original succession plan your father established. The room went completely silent. Even Tyler seemed shocked. 30%? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Janet nodded. The business has been appraised recently at $2.1 million. Emma's ownership interest is worth approximately $630,000. Mom stood up shakily. This can't be right. Emma doesn't know anything about running the business. Neither does Tyler, I said calmly. But that wasn't the criteria when Dad set up the corporation. The criteria was being his child. David Morrison reviewed the documents again. I have to say, this is my oversight. When your parents came to me about restructuring the estate plan, I should have caught these existing ownership interests. The changes they wanted to make are legally impossible without Emma's consent. Tyler finally exploded. This is insane. Emma's trying to steal from the family. I'm not trying to steal anything, I replied, my voice steady. I'm trying to protect what already legally belongs to me and what you've been trying to take without my knowledge. Janet laid out our documentation methodically. Over the past 2 years, attempts were made to transfer Emma's business shares to Tyler without her knowledge. Trust distributions were redirected away from Emma without proper notification. Even the family home mortgage was refinanced to add Tyler as a co-owner without Emma's consent as a trust beneficiary. Wait, I said, this being news to me. Tyler was added to the house mortgage. David Morrison looked through his files uncomfortably. Yes, as part of the estate restructuring. So Tyler now has ownership interest in the house, but I don't, even though we're both supposed to be equal trust beneficiaries. That's complicated, David said. No, it's simple, Janet replied. It's a breach of trust obligations. Emma should have been notified of any changes affecting her beneficiary status. I looked across the table at my family. How long were you planning to keep this secret? Were you ever going to tell me that I'd been written out of everything? Mom wiped her eyes. We thought it would be easier if you just didn't know. Tyler needs the financial support more. Easier for who? I asked. You made major legal and financial decisions affecting my life without telling me. You tried to take away ownership rights I didn't even know I had. Tyler leaned forward. Emma, be reasonable. What are you even going to do with business ownership? You don't want to run Dad's company. That's not the point, Tyler. The point is it was never your decision to make. Janet pulled out another document. There's something else we need to address. The unauthorized transfers over the past 2 years have created significant tax liabilities. The IRS may view these as attempted gifts that exceeded annual exclusion limits. David Morrison's face went white. How significant? Potentially $200,000 in penalties and back taxes, Janet said, plus interest. The room fell completely silent. But here's the good news, Janet continued. If we restore the original legal structure and Emma consents to proper, legal transfers that maintain her ownership rights. Most of these tax issues disappear. I realized this was my moment. After 31 years of accepting whatever my family decided was best for me, I finally had a choice. I could demand everything I was legally entitled to, or I could negotiate for something else entirely respect and equal treatment. I have some terms, I said. I pulled out my own document, a single page I'd prepared with Janet's help. First, full transparency. I want complete access to all family business and trust documents, with quarterly financial reports going forward. No more decisions made about my financial interests without my knowledge. Tyler rolled his eyes. Emma, you don't even understand financial reports. I'm a paralegal who's been organizing Mom's financial paperwork for 3 years, I replied. I understand more than you think, and if I need help understanding something, I'll hire professionals. Second, equal treatment in all family financial decisions. If Tyler gets business support for his ventures, I get equal consideration for my career goals. If Tyler gets added to property ownership, I get the same opportunity. Mom looked up. What career goals? You have a job. I want to go to law school, Mom. I've been accepted to Denver University's evening program, but I haven't been able to afford it while helping you with your anxiety and household management. The surprise on their faces was almost comical. They'd never asked about my goals because they'd never seen me as someone who had goals beyond helping them. Third, I continued, modification of the estate plan to reflect equal treatment. I'm not asking for identical inheritances, but I'm asking for fair ones based on actual need and contribution, not gender stereotypes about who needs financial support more. Janet added, this is particularly important because Emma's existing business ownership rights can't be changed without her consent anyway. Fourth, an end to the narrative that Tyler is the family success and I'm the family helper. I want acknowledgement that I've contributed significantly to this family's well-being, and I want that contribution valued equally with Tyler's achievements. Dad finally spoke. Emma, we never meant to make you feel less important. But you did, and now we need to decide whether you want to fix that or whether I need to protect my interests through legal action. David Morrison looked at his notes. What exactly are you proposing as a resolution? I took a deep breath. I want my legal ownership rights in the business acknowledged and protected. I want equal status as a trust beneficiary with full transparency about trust assets and decisions. I want Tyler removed from the house mortgage unless I'm added equally, or I want fair compensation for the equity interest I should have received. And in exchange, Tyler asked. In exchange, I won't demand immediate liquidation of my business ownership, which I have the legal right to do, and which would force a sale of Dad's company. I won't file a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty that would become public record. And I'll continue to be part of this family, but as an equal member, not as hired help. Janet leaned forward. I should mention that Emma's existing ownership rights give her significant leverage here. As a minority shareholder, she can demand an accounting, force a valuation, and even trigger a buyout clause that would require the business to purchase her shares at fair market value. How much would that be? Dad asked quietly. Based on current appraisals, approximately $630,000 plus legal fees and penalties for the unauthorized transfer attempts. Mom gasped. Dad put his head in his hands. Tyler looked like he was finally understanding the situation. But Emma's not asking for that, Janet continued. She's asking for something much simpler: equal treatment and transparency going forward. I pulled out one final document. I've prepared a family agreement that outlines fair treatment standards. If everyone signs this, we can restructure everything legally and properly, maintain family relationships, and ensure everyone's interests are protected. The agreement was 3 pages long, but the key points were simple. Equal information sharing, equal consideration for financial support, proportional inheritance based on contribution and need rather than favoritism, and respect for each family member's autonomy and life choices. There's one more thing, I said. I want a formal apology, not just sorry you're upset, but acknowledgement that what you did was wrong and hurtful. Tyler stood up. This is manipulation, Emma. You're using legal technicalities to force us into something. No, Tyler, I'm using legal rights to protect myself from manipulation. There's a difference. Janet gathered her documents. I'll give you all a week to review the proposed agreement, but I should mention that Emma's existing ownership rights don't require your consent to enforce. She's being generous by offering a negotiated settlement rather than demanding her full legal entitlements. David Morrison nodded grimly. She's right. Emma has significant legal leverage here that she's choosing not to use. As everyone prepared to leave, Mom approached me tentatively. Emma, I need to ask you something. Are you doing this because you're angry or because you actually want to be part of this family? I looked at her for a long moment. Mom, I've wanted to be part of this family my entire life. I just want to be part of it as myself, not as your helper. I want to be valued for who I am, not dismissed for who you think I should be. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. And yes, I'm angry. I'm angry that you tried to erase me. I'm angry that you made major decisions affecting my life without telling me. I'm angry that after 31 years, you still don't see me as someone who deserves equal consideration. I gathered my things, but I'm here offering you a chance to fix that. The question is whether you want to take it. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt something I'd never experienced before: complete control over my own future. Whether my family chose to treat me as an equal or not, I now had the legal protection and financial independence to live my life on my own terms. The power dynamic had shifted permanently. The week following our family meeting was the longest of my life. I heard nothing from any of them directly, but Janet kept me updated on communications from David Morrison. They're taking your proposal seriously, she told me Wednesday. David says your parents are consulting with a tax attorney about the best way to restructure everything legally. What about Tyler? He's the holdout. Apparently, he's been arguing that you're being vindictive and they should fight this legally rather than cave to your demands. Can they fight it successfully? Janet shook her head. Not really. Your ownership rights are clearly documented and valid. The most they could do is make things expensive and unpleasant for everyone, including themselves. Thursday, I got a text from Tyler. We need to talk, just us. I called Janet before responding. Should I meet with him? It's up to you, but I'd recommend having a witness present. This feels like an attempt to negotiate around the legal process. I agreed to meet Tyler for lunch, but only in a public place. We met at a busy restaurant near downtown, and from the moment he sat down, his agenda was clear. Emma, you're destroying our family over money. No, Tyler, our family was already destroyed by lies and betrayal. I'm just refusing to pretend otherwise anymore. He leaned forward, trying to look sincere. Look, I get that you're upset about the will thing, but Mom and Dad were just trying to be practical. I have business expenses, startup costs, you have a steady income. Tyler, do you know what my annual salary is? He shrugged. I don't know, 40,000, 50. I make $68,000 a year. After taxes, rent, and basic expenses, I have maybe 10,000 in savings. You received more than that for Christmas gifts last year alone. He looked uncomfortable. That's different. Those were investments in my business ventures. No, those were gifts that I wasn't offered equally, and that's exactly the problem. Tyler pulled out his phone. I want to show you something. This is my current business plan for the marketing company. With the capital from the inheritance restructuring, I could hire 12 employees and be profitable within 18 months. I looked at the slick presentation on his phone. Tyler, this is the fourth business plan you've shown the family in 5 years. What happened to the app development company? The food truck venture? The cryptocurrency consulting business? His jaw tightened. Those were learning experiences. This is different. Right, and when this one fails, you'll have another plan that requires more family capital. Meanwhile, I've been accepted to law school and haven't asked for a penny in support. Law school? You never mentioned law school. You never asked about my plans. None of you have ever asked what I wanted to do with my life. Tyler put his phone away. Emma, I'll make you a deal. Support the family's restructuring plan, and I'll make sure you get $50,000 from the business profits once my marketing company takes off. I stared at him. You're trying to bribe me with theoretical future profits from a business that doesn't exist yet, using family money you don't legally own to give up ownership rights worth over $600,000. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. The solution that works for everyone is the one I already proposed: equal treatment, transparency, and respect. Sign the family agreement. Tyler stood up abruptly. You know what, Emma? You've changed. You used to care about family harmony. I used to care about being accepted by you all, even if it meant accepting disrespect. Now I care about being treated fairly, even if it means you're uncomfortable. He threw a 20 on the table and walked out. That evening, Janet called with news. David Morrison just sent over a signed copy of your family agreement. Your parents and Tyler have all agreed to your terms. I sat down hard. Really, even Tyler? Apparently, your parents made it clear that fighting this legally would be expensive and public, and they'd rather preserve family relationships. Tyler signed under protest, but he signed. The next day, I received 3 separate phone calls. Dad called first. His voice was heavy with emotion. Emma, I owe you an apology, not just for the legal issues, but for 31 years of not seeing you clearly. You're right that we treated you like a helper instead of a daughter, and I'm ashamed of that. Mom called an hour later. I've been thinking about what you said, about us never asking about your goals or dreams. I realize I've been so focused on Tyler's future that I never considered you might have your own ambitions. I want to know about law school. I want to know about your plans. I want to know who my daughter really is. Tyler's call was different. Emma, I still think you handled this wrong, but I'm trying to understand your perspective. Maybe we can start over. I'd like that, I told him. But Tyler, it has to be a real fresh start. Not you tolerating me, but actually seeing me as an equal. They'll try. 6 months later, I was sitting in my first-year contracts class at Denver University Law School, funded by a combination of student loans, a partial scholarship, and for the first time in my life, family support. My parents had restructured their estate plan with full transparency. Tyler and I would inherit equally, with provisions for business ownership that reflected our actual contributions and interests. More importantly, they'd established an education fund that supported both of our professional development equally. Tyler had been added to the board of Dad's business, but so had I. While Tyler focused on marketing and expansion, I contributed legal research and compliance oversight. It turned out that having a law student in the family was valuable for business operations. The family dynamics had shifted permanently. Instead of being the helper, I'd become the legal advisor. Instead of being invisible, I'd become the family member they consulted before making major decisions. Instead of accepting whatever they decided was best for me, I'd become an equal voice in family planning. But the most important change was in how they saw me. At Tyler's recent birthday dinner, Dad introduced me to his business partners as my daughter Emma, the law student who keeps us out of legal trouble. Not the helper, not the practical one, not the daughter who was fine on her own. The law student, the one with professional expertise, the one who mattered. Mom had started asking about my classes, my career plans, my thoughts on current legal issues. She'd even attended a law school event with me, beaming with pride as professors discussed my academic performance. Tyler and I had rebuilt our relationship slowly. He'd finally started asking about my life, my work, my goals. His latest business venture was actually showing promise, and he'd begun consulting me on the legal aspects of his contracts and partnerships. I never realized how much legal stuff goes into running a business, he'd said recently. I probably could have avoided some expensive mistakes if I'd listened to you years ago. It wasn't a full apology for decades of dismissiveness, but it was acknowledgement. And acknowledgement, I'd learned, was the foundation of respect. The most surprising change had been in my relationship with my parents' friends and our extended family. Word had spread about the inheritance situation, and instead of seeing me as the troublemaker who'd caused family drama, most people were quietly impressed that I'd stood up for myself. I always wondered why you seemed so invisible at family events, my aunt had told me privately. Now, I understand you were being made invisible. Good for you for refusing to accept that anymore. But the real vindication came from an unexpected source. Tyler's girlfriend Madison, the influencer with 50,000 followers, had been at several family gatherings during the legal drama. Unbeknownst to us, she'd been quietly documenting the family dynamics for months. 3 months after our agreement was signed, Madison posted a series of Instagram stories about family dynamics and inheritance drama that went viral. She never named our family specifically, but anyone who knew us would recognize the story. I watched a family almost destroy itself because they couldn't see one daughter's worth, she'd written. The invisible daughter turned out to be the one with the most legal knowledge, business sense, and backbone. Sometimes the person you underestimate the most is the one who saves you from your own mistakes. The post included screenshots of legal documents, with names redacted, photos from family gatherings that showed the obvious favoritism, and a breakdown of how inheritance manipulation can backfire legally. Madison had over 200,000 followers by then, and the story was picked up by several TikTok accounts focused on family drama and legal education. Inheritance drama and invisible daughter became trending hashtags for a week. The viral attention brought unexpected benefits. I received dozens of messages from other invisible family members sharing their stories. A legal education website asked me to write an article about inheritance rights. 3 different law firms reached out about potential internship opportunities after graduation. Most importantly, it normalized my experience. I learned that family scapegoating, inheritance manipulation, and golden child favoritism were far more common than I'd realized. I wasn't alone in feeling invisible, and I wasn't wrong to fight back. Tyler was initially embarrassed by the viral attention, but eventually saw the business opportunity. Emma, you should start a TikTok account about legal education, he'd suggested. You could help other people understand their rights. It wasn't a bad idea. I'd started making short videos about inheritance law, trust structures, and family business ownership during my study breaks. The response had been overwhelming, thousands of people desperate to understand their legal rights in family situations. Working through this experience with a therapist, covered by my new student health insurance, I'd begun to understand the deeper patterns that had shaped our family dynamic. Emma, what you experienced is called assigned roles, Dr. Sarah Williams explained during one of our sessions. Families often unconsciously assign roles to children: the achiever, the helper, the rebel, the victim. These roles can become so entrenched that family members can't see past them, even when they're clearly inaccurate. She'd helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't necessarily malicious, but it was deeply damaging. They created a narrative where Tyler was the success story, and you were the support system. When you challenged that narrative by demanding equal treatment, it threatened their entire worldview. But why was it so important to them to maintain that narrative? I'd asked. Because admitting they were wrong about you meant admitting they'd wasted decades of your potential and treated you unfairly. That's a heavy psychological burden. It was easier to double down on the original story than face the guilt of recognizing their mistakes. Dr. Williams had also helped me process the anger I felt about losing so much time. Emma, you spent your 20s being the family caretaker instead of building your own career. That's a significant sacrifice, and it's normal to feel angry about time you can't get back. But she'd also helped me reframe the experience. The skills you developed as the family helper: organization, problem solving, conflict resolution, financial management, these are exactly the skills that helped you navigate this legal situation so effectively. Nothing you experienced was wasted if you learned from it. As I write this, I'm halfway through my second year of law school, specializing in family law and estate planning. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm now the expert in exactly the type of legal issues that nearly destroyed my relationship with my family. My grades are excellent, partly because I have real-world experience with many of the concepts we study. When we covered shareholder rights and fiduciary duties, I was the student with practical examples. When we discussed inheritance manipulation and will contests, I could speak from personal experience. I've been offered a summer internship at Morrison and Associates, the same firm that handled both sides of our family legal drama. Janet Morrison has become an unofficial mentor, and she's encouraging me to consider specializing in family business law after graduation. Emma, you have a unique perspective on family legal issues, she'd told me. You understand both the legal complexities and the emotional dynamics. That combination is rare and valuable. The financial stress that had dominated my 20s was finally easing. Between the education fund, my internship income, and the TikTok sponsorships from my legal education content, I was actually building savings for the first time in my adult life. More importantly, I was building something I'd never had before, a future that I'd designed for myself, rather than accepting whatever role my family assigned me. Our family relationships today aren't perfect, but they're honest in a way they never were before. We have regular family meetings now where everyone gets equal input on major decisions. Dad consults both Tyler and me before making business moves. Mom asks about my law school experiences with genuine interest. Tyler's marketing company had actually become successful, partly because he'd finally learned to focus on one venture instead of jumping between ideas. Having real business ownership responsibilities had matured him in ways that unlimited family funding never could. The most significant change was in how we communicated. Instead of avoiding conflict to maintain family harmony, we'd learned to address issues directly. When Tyler made a comment that dismissed my legal expertise, I called him out immediately instead of staying silent. When Mom started slipping back into patterns of asking me to handle tasks while expecting nothing from Tyler, I reminded her of our agreement. Emma's right, Dad had said during one particularly tense family meeting. We're all still learning how to treat each other as equals instead of falling back into the old patterns. The old patterns were deeply ingrained. It took constant vigilance to maintain the new dynamic. But the alternative, going back to being invisible, was no longer acceptable to any of us. The most unexpected outcome of my story has been the impact on others. My TikTok account, at Legal Eagle Emma, now has over 400,000 followers. I create content about inheritance rights, family business law, and legal protection for young adults. The comments section is filled with people sharing their own stories of family manipulation, inheritance drama, and emotional abuse disguised as family loyalty. Many have used information from my videos to protect their own interests or challenge unfair treatment. Your video about shareholder rights helped me realize my family can't just kick me out of our business without proper documentation, one follower wrote. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week. I found out my parents changed their will to favor my brother, and I thought I had no options, wrote another. Now I understand my rights as a trust beneficiary. Thank you for giving me the knowledge to protect myself. I've partnered with legal aid organizations to create free resources about family legal rights. We've developed templates for family business agreements, inheritance discussion guides, and red flag checklists for inheritance manipulation. The response has been overwhelming. Apparently, there are thousands of invisible family members who have been systematically excluded from family planning decisions, and they're hungry for information about their rights. As I prepare for my final year of law school, I'm planning to launch a law practice focused specifically on family inheritance rights and business succession planning. The goal isn't just to help families navigate legal issues, but to help them build more equitable systems from the beginning. Most inheritance drama could be prevented with better communication and fairer planning, I explained in a recent podcast interview. Families get into trouble when they make assumptions about what's best for each family member without actually asking those family members what they want. My business plan includes family mediation services, inheritance planning consultations, and educational workshops about legal rights. I want to help other families avoid the years of resentment and manipulation that nearly destroyed mine. Tyler, surprisingly, has expressed interest in the business side of the practice. Emma, you're great with the legal stuff, but you'll need marketing and client management systems, he'd said. Maybe we could actually work together on something. It would be ironic if the brother who'd once dismissed my capabilities became my business partner, but stranger things have happened. The key would be ensuring it remained an equal partnership from the beginning. People often ask me if I regret the legal battle, if I wish I'd handled things differently, if I miss the simpler family dynamic we had before. The answer is complicated. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret demanding equal treatment. I don't regret refusing to be erased from my own family's future. But I do grieve for the time we lost. I grieve for the relationship I could have had with my parents if they'd seen me clearly from the beginning. I grieve for the sibling bond Tyler and I might have had if we hadn't been cast as competitors for family resources. Most of all, I grieve for the version of myself who spent 31 years believing that being invisible was normal, that being helpful was enough, that asking for equal treatment was selfish. Emma, you've described a process of mourning, Dr. Williams had explained. You're mourning the loss of the family you thought you had, while also celebrating the family you're building now. Both of those feelings can coexist. The family we're building now is messier than the old one, but it's also more honest. We argue more, but we also communicate more. There's less pretense of perfect harmony, but there's more genuine respect. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're the family helper, the forgotten child, the one who's expected to be grateful for scraps while someone else gets the feast, I want you to know something. Your feelings are valid. Your worth doesn't depend on your family's ability to recognize it, and you have more power than you realize to change your situation. Start by learning your rights. Understand your legal position regarding family assets, trust beneficiary status, and inheritance planning. You can't protect yourself from manipulation if you don't know when it's happening. Document everything. Keep records of financial commitments made to you, promises about inheritance, and evidence of unequal treatment. If you need to challenge unfair decisions later, documentation is crucial. Set boundaries. Stop accepting treatment you wouldn't tolerate from strangers just because it's coming from family. But we're family is not an excuse for disrespect, manipulation, or emotional abuse. Build your own life. Don't wait for family permission or support to pursue your dreams. I spent years waiting for my family to invest in my future the way they invested in Tyler's. I should have invested in myself from the beginning. Seek professional help when needed. Whether it's legal counsel, therapy, or financial advice, don't try to navigate complex family situations alone. Professional guidance can help you see options you might miss and avoid costly mistakes. Most importantly, remember that you deserve equal treatment. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. You deserve to have your contributions acknowledged and your future considered in family planning. Family loyalty should go both ways. If your family expects loyalty from you, you have the right to expect respect in return. Throughout this process, people have asked whether I was seeking justice or revenge. The distinction matters. Revenge would have been using my legal leverage to destroy my family financially, demanding immediate payment of my full business ownership value, or going public with every detail of their manipulation to humiliate them. Justice was demanding equal treatment, fair compensation for my contributions, and transparency in family financial decisions going forward. Revenge would have been cutting them out of my life completely once I had the power to do so. Justice was giving them the opportunity to rebuild our relationships on equal terms, while maintaining boundaries that protected my interests. The goal was never to punish them for past mistakes, but to prevent future ones. The goal was never to make them suffer, but to make them see me. And ultimately, that's what happened. The legal battle wasn't really about money or inheritance. It was about recognition, respect, and equal treatment. The money was just the tool that forced them to pay attention. As I finish writing this story, I'm sitting in the law library at Denver University, surrounded by case books and highlighted notes about contract law and fiduciary responsibilities. My laptop has two screens open, one with my studies, one with messages from followers sharing their own family struggles. Tomorrow I have a family dinner where my parents will ask about my classes, Tyler will update us on his business progress, and we'll make decisions together about the family business as equals. It's the family dynamic I'd dreamed of for 31 years, finally made real through legal necessity. The invisible daughter is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her worth, understands her rights, and refuses to accept less than equal treatment from anyone, including family. If my story has taught me anything, it's that respect isn't something you can earn through service or sacrifice. Respect is something you demand and maintain through boundaries and consequences. I didn't win this battle by being the better person, by turning the other cheek, or by putting family harmony above my own well being. I won by being smarter, more prepared, and more determined than the people who tried to erase me. And sometimes, that's exactly what it takes. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the invisible family member? Have you discovered family betrayal that changed everything? How did you handle being underestimated or dismissed by people who were supposed to love you? Share your story in the comments. You might inspire someone else who needs to hear that they're not alone, that their feelings are valid, and that they have more power than they realize to change their situation. And if this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for each other is simply say, "You're not invisible, your story matters, and you deserve better." Remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Until next time, this is Emma reminding you that justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes it's justice prepared. Like and subscribe if you believe everyone deserves to be seen and valued by their family. And remember, you're never too old to start demanding the respect you've always deserved.